Welcome back to the Simplified Summary YouTube channel. We are absolutely thrilled to have you here with us today.
So glad you could join us.
Before we really dive into today's text, make sure you hit that subscribe button. It really helps improve the channel's retention and, keeps the lights on around here.
Which is actually a pretty relevant point for today.
Right. As you'll see in a moment, keeping the lights on is a luxury the household we're about to visit desperately needs. While you're at it, please drop a like on the video and share your valuable thoughts in the comments below. We love reading them.
We really do.
So today we are focusing our lens on a masterpiece of classic literature. We're stepping into the world of the legendary Munshi Premchand.
Specifically looking at a brilliant excerpt from his collection, Mansarovar Part 1.
Exactly. Our mission for this deep dive is to unpack a single, devastating story titled Chank-Jhik. The goal today is to dissect the anatomy of a bitter domestic Cold War. We want to explore how the grinding friction between financial stress and traditional expectations can plunge a home into absolute darkness.
And examine the illusions we chase when we are desperate for an escape.
It's a heavy one, but it is a remarkable story to analyze.
It really is, primarily because it showcases Premchand's genius for domestic realism. I mean, he completely strips away the need for sweeping landscapes or epic battlefields.
He doesn't need them.
No, not at all. He chooses instead to generate this visceral, suffocating tension within the cramped walls of a single-family home. Right from the opening lines, he drops you into a space where the air itself feels poisoned by an unresolved conflict.
You instantly feel the claustrophobia.
Yeah, of a household that has essentially ceased to function. It's just paralyzed by the sheer crushing weight of mutual resentment.
Okay, let's unpack this setup, because the scene Premchand paints is just bleak. We are introduced to the narrator's household, and it has been locked in a bitter standoff for days.
A total standstill.
Right. You have the mother sulking in one corner, the wife simmering in another. The tension is so thick, so pervasive, that basic survival routines have ground to a halt. Zero food was cooked the night before.
Which is such a massive red flag in any household.
Absolutely. The narrator, the husband caught in the middle, actually tries to take the initiative during the day. He goes to the stove and attempts to make a simple pot of khichdi.
Just the most basic comfort food.
Just to get some basic sustenance into everyone's stomachs.
Hmm.
But the atmosphere is so hostile that nobody even touches it. The food just sits there, going completely cold.
The uneaten khichdi sitting cold on the stove is such a potent sensory detail for you to picture. Premchand uses it to communicate the absolute depth of the family's dysfunction.
Because food is usually the olive branch, right?
Exactly. In a traditional household, the hearth is the center of gravity. It represents care, routine, the continuity of life itself. When the stove goes cold and when even the olive branch of a freshly cooked meal is ignored, you understand that the breakdown in communication is total.
It's not just a spat.
No, this isn't a fleeting argument where voices are raised and apologies follow shortly after. This is a 24-hour siege. Silence is being actively weaponized.
And it's starving the family, literally and emotionally. And, the collateral damage in a siege like this always falls on the most vulnerable.
Always.
The plight of the children in this story is genuinely tough to read. You have this little girl, and she's just wandering aimlessly through the house.
Like a ghost.
Yeah, she drifts between her father, her mother, and her grandmother, silently begging for a scrap of comfort or connection. But no one offers her a single kind word. No one picks her up.
They're completely absorbed in their own anger.
Then the son returns home from school. In a functioning home, that's a moment of warmth. He'd get a snack, someone would ask about his day.
Right.
Instead, he walks into this poisoned environment and is rendered completely invisible in his own home. The adults are so entrenched in their misery that the children just cease to matter.
That is the most tragic consequence of this domestic Cold War. The adults are fighting a battle over finances, ego, pride, but the fallout inevitably trickles down to punish the innocent.
The kids don't even know what's going on.
They're left navigating a minefield, entirely confused. They haven't committed any crime, yet they are wandering around wondering what they must have done to make everyone's heart turn against them.
It's heartbreaking.
The adults are so consumed by their own righteous indignation that they have entirely abdicated their fundamental roles as caregivers. The home has metamorphosed into a hostile environment for the exact people it is supposed to nurture and protect.
It makes you wonder what catastrophic betrayal sparked this massive, home-destroying standoff. So what does this all mean? What actually started this?
You'd think it was a massive scandal.
But it's wild that a 24-hour siege of silence actually stems from something as mundane as a shopping list.
A literal list.
The root cause here is an upcoming festival called Tija. The narrator's mother, Amma, drafts a list of traditional gifts she wants to send to the narrator's sister's house for the occasion.
It's a standard, expected obligation in their culture.
But the wife takes one look at this list and balks. She reviews the items and determines that the list is absurdly lavish given their current financial reality.
And we need to emphasize for the listener that their financial reality is genuinely grim. Premchand makes it very clear that the family business is suffering a significant downturn.
It's not just about cutting out luxuries.
No, they are actively struggling to balance the ledger for daily essentials. They are agonizing over how to afford basic staples like milk and ghee. So when the mother produces a list that seemingly ignores this precarious reality, the wife steps in with a hard-line counterproposal.
She demands practical, sweeping cuts.
Right.
The mother's original list dictates setting 5 saris, along with an assortment of toys and sweets. The wife looks at their dwindling bank account, looks at the empty pantry, and just puts her foot down.
She has to.
She insists they send 3 saris instead of 5 and drastically reduce the toys and sweets. On the surface, it seems like a perfectly rational adjustment when you don't even have enough money for milk.
It is entirely rational from an accounting perspective.
But I see the mother's logic too. Isn't there an argument that by cutting the Tija gift so drastically, the wife is essentially severing the family's last remaining lifeline to social respectability?
That is the exact crux of the tension. And you've hit on why this conflict is so intractable. This isn't just a disagreement over fabric.
Right.
It's a profound ideological clash. The mother embodies societal obligation, tradition, and the desperate need to maintain the family's status and face in the broader community.
The appearances.
Yes. For her, sending those 5 saris is about signaling to the world and to her daughter that their family is still prosperous and respectable, even if they are quietly starving behind closed doors.
While the wife embodies pragmatic economic survival.
Exactly. She cannot afford to care about community whispers when she is staring at an empty ledger and hungry children.
The wife actually delivers this airtight line to summarize her position. She tells her mother-in-law, first, light the lamp in your own house, then light it in the mosque.
It's brilliant.
Charity begins at home. You don't hemorrhage your dwindling wealth for external validation when your own family is struggling to survive. It's a fierce, undeniable piece of logic.
It is fierce, but the profound tragedy for you, the listener, to recognize here is that neither woman is factually wrong.
That's the hardest part.
The mother is entirely justified in her desire to maintain their social standing and honor her daughter according to tradition. The wife is equally justified in her fierce drive to protect the family from financial ruin and ensure there is food on the table.
They're both fighting for the family, just in entirely different ways.
Exactly. Because neither is operating from a place of pure malice, but rather from competing, mutually exclusive values, the fight becomes a deadlock. When the instinct for sheer survival clashes against the deep-seated need for identity and tradition, the resulting explosion leaves scorch marks on everyone involved.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. A fight about a shopping list never actually stays about the shopping list.
Never.
The friction over the Tija gifts rapidly deteriorates into vicious personal attacks. The budget disagreement acts as a shovel, and they start digging up all the buried corpses of historical grievances.
Oh yeah. The initial spark of the budget cuts ignites a massive powder keg of historical resentments. The wife is feeling cornered by the mother's stubborn insistence on tradition over practicality, so she resorts to a deeply cutting, sarcastic remark.
She goes straight for the throat.
She bypasses the saris entirely and targets the mother's own background, weaponizing the family's long-standing poverty.
It's a brutal escalation.
Right.
The wife sneers that Amma must be used to lighting those cheap, cuppy, little mud lamps in her past. She draws a sharp contrast, stating that in her 10 years of marriage in this house, she hasn't even seen a proper lantern.
Ouch.
Right. She's effectively saying, stop acting like we are some noble, wealthy dynasty that needs to send 5 saris to save face. We can't even afford decent lighting, and maybe you're just comfortable living in the dark. It's a direct, humiliating strike at the family's pride.
It is a profound shift in the rules of engagement. The wife is no longer just using their poverty as a logistical constraint to win a budget argument.
She's using it as a weapon.
She is wielding it to humiliate her mother-in-law. And this is the precise moment the narrator, the husband, decides he can no longer remain a passive observer.
He finally steps in.
He attempts to step into the fray and exert his authority as the patriarch. He orders his wife to keep quiet, demanding she remember her place and not overstep her boundaries by insulting his mother.
But the wife is way past the point of submission at this stage.
Way past.
She has been holding the line on the family's financial survival, and she is certainly going to hold her ground against her husband. She pivots and fires back at him with incredible ferocity. She demands, "Are you scolding me like you bought me? If you say one thing, you'll hear two. Is this what a wife's devotion means?"
She completely dismantles his attempt at control.
She vehemently rejects his attempt to silence her, making it crystal clear that she views herself as a partner facing a crisis, not a piece of property. Her devotion doesn't require her to blindly march the family into financial ruin just to appease his ego or his mother's pride.
What Premchand illustrates here so perfectly is the instantaneous, humiliating collapse of the husband's authority.
He had no foundation to stand on.
None. He attempts to play the traditional, commanding patriarch, but he possesses zero moral or practical leverage. He cannot solve the looming financial crisis. He lacks the emotional intelligence to mediate the ideological divide between his mother and his wife, and he certainly cannot win a verbal sparring match against a spouse armed with the undeniable, cold facts of their poverty.
So what does he do?
Stripped of any real power, unable to lead or compromise, he folds entirely.
He retreats like a routed soldier. He literally abandons the battlefield. He leaves his mother and wife seething. He leaves his children hungry and confused, and he walks into a pitch-dark room and just locks the door behind him.
It's such a childish reaction. He just sits there in the blackness, wallowing in an ocean of self-pity. He actually curses the exact moment he married his wife, branding her as inauspicious.
Placing all the blame on her.
He sits in the dark and views his entire 10-year marriage as a joyless cinema reel, totally devoid of any warmth or affection. It is such a melodramatic, helpless reaction to a situation that desperately requires leadership.
It highlights a staggering failure of partnership. Instead of facing the complex, thorny reality of his life, acknowledging that his family's circumstances are changing, that their finances require grueling decisions, and that his wife has a valid, necessary voice, he opts for isolation.
He just checks out.
The cinema reel metaphor you mentioned is particularly revealing. He is actively rewriting a decade of shared history, of raising children, of building a life, and reducing it all into a single, flat narrative of his own victimhood.
It's easier that way.
Exactly. He finds it easier to cast himself as the passive martyr of an unlucky marriage than to do the difficult work of helping his family navigate a painful transition. The dark room becomes his sanctuary from accountability. So he's sitting there in this suffocating darkness, stewing in his own manufactured misery, while his home is essentially collapsing around him. And then the isolation is shattered.
The interruption.
He hears footsteps approaching his dark room. Suddenly, the blinding beam of a flashlight pierces through the blackness.
This is a masterful structural pivot by Premchand. The sudden arrival of the flashlight violently intrudes upon the narrator's self-imposed exile. Notice how the outside world operates entirely oblivious to the domestic sphere.
Right. In walks Jaidev, the narrator's friend. And Jaidev is either completely oblivious to the glacial tension in the house, or he's willfully ignoring it.
He just barges right in.
He breezes in with a joke, asking the narrator if the lamps have been retrenched to save money, or if he's betting against the dead by sleeping so soundly in the middle of the day.
Just casual banter in the middle of a war zone.
And the narrator, who is far too embarrassed to admit his home is falling apart, lies through his teeth. He claims he just had a headache and was trying to rest his eyes.
Jaidev's arrival represents the intrusion of the external, male-dominated world, a world that has the distinct luxury of ignoring the cold stove and the silent weeping in the kitchen.
They get to just walk away from it.
Jaidev hasn't just come to check on his friend's health. He has arrived with a proposition, a literal ticket out of the suffocating house.
Jaidev insists that the narrator must get up right now and come see a magnificent Janki over at Seth Guramal's temple. And when Jaidev invites him to see this religious tableau, the sheer scale of the diorama stands in such mocking contrast to the narrator's own home.
The description is wild.
Jaidev describes it with dazzling sensory detail. He mentions it was constructed by a highly skilled artisan brought all the way from Delhi. He talks about the elaborate mirrors reflecting everywhere, the blinding, brilliant electric lights, and an incredible fountain shooting sweet-smelling rose water right in front of the central throne.
It is a sensory overload of wealth, spectacle, and divine perfection.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture,
Premchand is drawing a brutal, masterful contrast for you to consider. Think about the physical and emotional space the narrator currently occupies. His reality is defined by scarcity and conflict.
Starvation, essentially.
His home is engulfed in darkness, both the literal darkness of the locked room he hides in, and the metaphorical darkness of the cheap mud lamps, the uneaten khichdi, and the bitter, deeply rooted resentment.
And right in the middle of this squalor, Jaidev arrives, offering an escape hatch.
To a world of artificial, blinding electric light and the intoxicating scent of rosewater.
It's the ultimate temptation. I mean, do you stay in the dark room and listen to the silent suffering of your starving family? Or do you walk out the door to look at pretty lights and smell rosewater?
It's an easy choice for him.
The narrator, who has already demonstrated he cannot handle the crushing pressure of his reality, completely surrenders to the temptation. He notes internally that his friends know his ultimate weakness. He's entirely incapable of resisting persistent persuasion.
Which is really just another flavor of his cowardice.
Exactly. He doesn't want to fight with Jaidev the way he fought with his wife. So he quietly slips away. He abandons his feuding family, leaving the cold stove and the wandering children behind, just to go stare at a shiny display.
His surrender serves as the ultimate climax of his failure. He actively trades the grueling, necessary work of illuminating his own home, of mediating a compromise between his mother and his wife, of comforting his neglected children, for the easy, passive consumption of someone else's artificial light.
He takes the easy way out.
The Janki is beautiful, undoubtedly, but it is a facade. It is a temporary spectacle financed by a wealthy man, completely divorced from the narrator's actual grounded life. By choosing to walk out the door and view the Janki, he chooses illusion over reality and distraction over his fundamental duty.
It's a gut punch of an ending, because it holds a mirror right up to you, the listener. While Premchand wrote this decades ago, the core mechanics of the conflict are painfully modern.
We see this all the time today.
We all experience the crushing weight of financial anxiety. We all know the visceral panic of a budget that simply won't stretch to cover the heavy expectations of our families or our society.
The pressure is universal.
And if we are honest with ourselves, we all have our own version of a dark room that we retreat to when the pressures of the world demand more than we feel capable of giving. We all have our preferred methods of shutting down.
The psychological mechanisms of avoidance haven't evolved at all, but looking at the story from a slightly different angle leaves us with a lingering, provocative thought to mull over.
Okay, let's hear it.
We spent this entire time analyzing the personal failures of the husband, the stubbornness of the mother, and the harsh pragmatism of the wife. But what if the true tragedy isn't their individual flaws, but the societal structure that puts them in this impossible bind to begin with?
Oh, that's interesting.
It leaves you wondering, if the wife had compromised on the saris, or if the husband had actually stood up to his mother, would the darkness have truly lifted? Or does Premchand's story suggest that in a society bound by such strict, suffocating financial and traditional roles, individual choices ultimately don't matter when the system itself is entirely bankrupt?
That is a heavy, fascinating perspective to chew on. Are we fighting each other when we should be fighting the system? And what is your chunky when life gets overwhelming? What artificial lights are you running toward to escape the tough conversations at home?
It's definitely something to think about.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Simplified Summary YouTube channel for this deep dive into Premchand's masterful, enduring storytelling. If this analysis gave you an aha moment today, please make sure to subscribe, drop a like on this video, and share your thoughts and your own chunky experiences in the comments section. We read every single one. Until next time, keep exploring.